Let's talk about luck. This is part two because yesterday I did a part one. And I want to talk about in today's episode on one of the biggest lies that we repeat to ourselves to feel safe. Or I know I repeat it to myself to feel safe is that I'm not lucky. It was very important to me to know that I worked really, really hard. As a Black woman who grew up with parents who immigrated from West Africa, who grew up in the Bronx, who really embodied the whole work twice as hard, to get half as far. And not even embodied it, but like I understood that. I built this life brick by brick. But I'm learning that luck isn't an insult to my discipline. It works together with my discipline. Because every win has some luck in it. There's like an alignment in the world. Every single one. So hard work matters, skill matters, and strategy matters. And this might sound unfair, but 100% of the effort or 200% of the effort that we put into something does not actually guarantee either half as much or even 100% outcome. And unfortunately, the math may not be mathing, but that's just how life is, right? And you can do everything right and still lose. You can do something messy and still win. And understanding that, I think it makes life a tad bit easier to navigate because everything isn't on you or me to like have it figured out all the time and do it perfectly or make that one correct decision. It actually allows flexibility in life, right? Because otherwise, when outcomes don't match effort, we tend to spiral into why is it working for everyone else and not me? Why am I so unlucky? Why am I so this? And we start giving ourselves all this negative talk that actually then hinders us. Rather than if I know for me, when I started realizing, oh, actually, no, some things are just straight alignment. I applied at the right time. I spoke to the person at the right time. Did I do some work in the background to make sure that when I did apply, I was ready to go? Yes. But also, other things were working in my favor. So sometimes the answer really is boring and quite painful. The reason why we didn't get what we didn't get was because the alignment wasn't there. The timing, the access, the context, the readiness, the attention, whatever it was that the magic is behind wasn't working. And it's not only on us why things don't work in our favors. This doesn't absolve us, but it does put some perspective. And as James Baldwin put it, you can't you can't tell the children there's no hope. Because if you convince yourself outcomes are purely merit based, then every single miss feels like a moral failure. And the world is already hard. So that's a lot to carry. That's too much weight for a human nervous system, okay? And I want to introduce a researcher named Richard Wiseman, who studied luck in the UK. And I heard about him through my Leak Teal's podcast on luck. And he says finding luck, or sorry, people who find luck are not necessarily smarter or more talented, but they do tend to have these three things. And that's they tend to be extroverted, open-minded, and optimistic. Now, I think the translation to all of that is that they're willing to extend first. And I'm going to define extroversion here as someone who's willing to say hello, ask a question, start the conversation, raise their hand, and put yourself in proximity, put yourself in an environment. And I have another video about how environments have really shaped me. Not only my social media environments helped me pay off 60K worth of debt in 18 months, but also helped me learn a ton to then move in the direction I wanted and increase my luck, but also how the environments I put myself in helped me meet different partners who really aligned with where I wanted to go with my life. So your environment is really important. And I do not consider myself an extroverted person by any means necessary. My happiest moment is in my room, in my chair, reading my book, listening to my podcast, writing, whatever. But I do understand that luck favors motion, luck favors visibility. So yeah, when most people meet me, they think I'm extroverted because I'm gonna say hello. I'm gonna be like, what's up? I'm gonna comment on your LinkedIn and talk about, oh my gosh, I love this thing that you just shared with me. This is my thoughts. I'm going to do it. Does it take a little bit of work for me to muster that? Yeah, but once I'm locked in and I'm gonna do it. And I just want to extend that the extroversion might turn some people away and say, well, not me, but I would like us to redefine what extroversion means. So that's one thing. And then, so from extroversion, he also mentioned open-minded. So open-mindedness to me is where things can get uncomfortable because it means sitting with being wrong without imploding, letting your worldview be challenged, and not confusing disagreement with disrespect. And I think that's really hard when our lives are engineered echo chambers. Our friends, our feeds, our algorithms, even as AI becomes more and more part of our daily life, AI now mirrors ourselves back to us. But growth requires friction. Octavia Butler wrote, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. Parable of the sower, y'all. If you can't tolerate being wrong once a day, luck has nowhere to land. Because how you gonna learn? How you gonna put yourself out there? Luck is trying to find you, but you out here attached to being right. And if you're attached to being right, you're not going to want to try new things. So open-mindedness is really important. And it's a muscle. Because it's like, what? Am I supposed to admit I'm wrong publicly? Yeah, you are. And I struggle sometimes with it, but it gets easier when you realize that being wrong is not a verdict on you and your intelligence. Especially if you're like someone like me who being smart was the currency that you use to navigate the world. And it's realizing that smartness does also leave room for openness and learning. So yeah. If you can't tolerate being wrong once a day, luck has nowhere to land. I just want to repeat that. So my league mentioned that a daily practice that you should have is saying you're wrong once a day. I think even leaning more. I think seek a different perspective. And if you're on social media, that means maybe, read a different article, find a different viewpoint. You don't have to engage, but maybe read some of the comments that are actually making points about why they believe something, not just like hate spewing. No. Like if you're in a space and the comments seem helpful and there's actual conversation happening, yeah. If you read one or two comments and it's just like, no, you guys are it's just hate, then move away from that. Acknowledge you learned something. Now, this might be maybe personal to me, but one of my biggest pet peeves is like when you talk to someone who went to a class, a webinar, a museum, something, you're like, oh, I didn't learn anything new. How? How have you experienced something and you're telling me you didn't learn anything? You read a whole book and it didn't change or further your understanding of something? That seems wild to me. So I'll get off my soapbox, but acknowledge you learned something. Find the thing that you learned, find the thing that deepened your understanding. And I already said, my league mentioned, say you're wrong at least once a day. And apologize without drama, apologize without excuses. If you are wrong, when you realize that maybe your thinking evolved, say that. If you realize, no, I was just legitimately wrong in my understanding, say that. It's fine. And then move on. And that adaptability allows us to learn quicker, put ourselves in more spaces, and attract more luck. And the last one that he mentioned was optimism. Optimism gets a bad rep right now, I think, or not even it's getting a bad rep, but I think it's hard because the world is on fire, literally and figuratively, okay? The wars, the layoffs, the policies making life harder, the actual climate disasters. So you cannot scroll without being reminded that things are ridiculously fragile. And I just want to posit that optimism is not denial. It's believing you can hold reality and possibility at the same time. As Toni Morrison said, if you surrender to the wind, you can ride it. So understand and obviously pay attention to what's happening and be in community and do what you need to do, but also understand that it's things are not over until they're over. And I believe that optimism is what keeps you open to learning, to meeting people, to trying again. It's believing you can survive disappointments without shutting down. I think that's one of the major unlocks in life. So here's the reframe I would love you to steal. Instead of maybe leaning into, and I'm doing this January 13th, so I think we're still in the vision board manifesting phase of the year. Use those tools and expect good things. I think sometimes we do the vision boards, we do the manifestation, but we don't really believe it. And if you watched Issa Rae's Insecure, she would always talk to herself in the mirror. And I think the thing about affirmations and manifestations is that you need to keep repeating, and even prayer, you need to keep repeating the thing that you want and you believe until you believe it's true. Like I think it's easy to say things, but we need that breakthrough. And that breakthrough only happens when we keep repeating it to ourselves and we keep allowing ourselves to see the opportunities around us. And I think that's when things really start shifting for us. And by expecting good things, you're able to ask more. You're able to advocate for yourself. You're able to raise your hand. And most importantly, you don't self reject. If you watch one of my earlier videos, I said that this year I'm moving towards 1,000 rejections. And one of the ways I did that yesterday is I reached out to a podcast and I asked to speak. They might reject me, they might say yes, but I did not self reject. I'm gonna let them reject me. Or going back to expect good things, I will let them say, we will happily have you. Here's our schedule. I think if you act lucky, you increase your chances of actually having luck because it changes your behavior, changes your mindset, and therefore changes your outcomes. And as Dr. Wiseman's final advice posits, which might be the most underrated one, make other people lucky. Share information, mentor, recommend, be generous with credit, be kind without leverage. And I've mentioned this 1,000 times in this video. I'll mention it again. Like this whole YouTube segment came from listening to Myleek's podcast on luck. And Myleek Teal is such a resource. I think she's so lucky because she shares so much. She mentors freely. She recommends stuff. She shares knowledge. So with that said, as Maya Angelou has reminded us 1,000 trillion times, when you learn, teach. When you get, give. Because I think when you live in a way that expands luck for others, you start to feel luckier. And it's not magic. It's psychology, social work. I'm a social worker, so I think that's funny. And it's practical. Uh, at the end of the day, luck is not necessarily about fairness. It's probability meeting preparation, openness, and a risk. So we cannot control our outcomes, but we can control how open we are to receiving them and to creating space for them to land to us. So drop a comment. What's something people called luck that was actually you staying open? So if you didn't watch part one yesterday, please go watch part one because that's all about systems. And this one is about mindset. And you need both in order to create more luck for yourself. So with that said, I'm here every single day. So subscribe for more of these wonderful gems, but also tell me, what do you want to hear about? What's on your mind? All right, I'll see you tomorrow.